Michigan's spring game was about a week ago, and I think it's good to do spring game overreactions. It's something that a lot of people do. They get all up in arms about how certain teams played and how certain players played. Spring games don't really matter. These are guys going up against their teammates. That does have an effect. They are running plays that they've seen against each other in practice pretty well every day. Normally, defenses are going to dominate in spring games. That's just how it goes. So the 7-6 score doesn't really rattle me all too much. But there are a few things that can be gathered from spring games, and that is footwork, chemistry between players, and I think you can get a pretty good read on the offensive and defensive line. But the first thing we have to talk about is definitely Bryce Underwood. He's been making headlines everywhere. Everybody thinks he's the same quarterback as he was last year. And I have to say, maybe that is true. His mechanics looked very similar. He still didn't look super fluent in the pocket, and it just seemed like the only difference in his throwing mechanics, he looked a little more over the top, maybe like he was driving the ball more, which is not exactly something that was supposed to be improved, right? Throwing the ball hard is not something that has been a problem for him. Layering the ball is something that was. We saw him overthrow a couple guys a couple times in a triple coverage. It was just kind of a messy game for Bryce Underwood. But obviously, he is still under new coaching. Coy Detmer Jr. has been working with him. Jason Beck has been working with him. There is still time to get that ironed out, but we will see what comes of it. He went 3 of 9 in this game and just didn't look super great. But another thing that does have to be mentioned is he only played one quarter. He didn't have those 3 quarters after to get into a rhythm, so maybe he just wasn't able to get himself into a flow early. I'm not sure, but not a super great showing from Bryce Underwood in this game. But Tommy Carr, who has burst onto the scene as the second-string quarterback, it seems, he had a great day. He looked really comfortable in the pocket, and I think he had the best throw of the day by far. He threw a back shoulder ball to Jamar Browder that was right to the pylon. It was a great throw, 40 yards in the air at least, and unfortunately Jamar Browder did drop it. That's one thing that's been a problem for Browder. Sometimes he has really good hands, he has great size, he has good speed, but his hands are just incredibly inconsistent. So Tommy Carr, he looked really good. He looked comfortable. He was scrambling out of the pocket. He ran a couple times. He's pretty fast, and he has a pretty good arm. So it's good to see Lloyd Carr's grandson potentially making a name for himself here at Michigan. And I got to talk about the defense. This is one of those things that you can get a read on. It is hard to judge at times, but for the offensive and defensive line specific, you can get a read. The D-line looked pretty solid. It looked like they were moving the offensive line at times. The offensive line also looked like they were moving the defensive line. So really it looks like both of those lines are pretty consistent this year and are going to be very solid. Not going to be a problem in Ann Arbor as usual. But for the rest of the defense, it's kind of hard to judge. You look at the secondary, you can't get a great read. The linebackers, you can't get a super great read on them. But it does look like those groups have very high potential. The linebackers, which were the biggest question mark going into this offseason, they seem to hold their own pretty well. Troy Bowles looked pretty good. Chase Taylor looked pretty good. And NOB, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, looked good as well. So I am very optimistic about that middle of the defense, which was a very big question mark. But we will see what happens when the season rolls around. And then the final thing I want to talk about, and I cannot leave this out, how about Savion Hyder? I mean, he is absolutely built. This is the first time we really got to see him in a competitive game on the field. He was bowling through guys. Reminds me a lot of Kenneth Walker, just kind of a bowling ball running back. Not super big, only 6 foot tall, but 220 pounds. Just an absolute beast with the ball. Looks like he is going to make an immediate impact in his freshman season. And he's running alongside Jordan Marshall, who already cemented himself as one of the best running backs in college football. That running back room is going to be insane. And seeing the offensive line perform really well in this spring game as well was pretty uplifting. So ultimately, I think Michigan looks pretty solid. Again, you can't take a ton out of the spring game, but I think they look pretty good. The biggest question mark remaining for me still has to be the linebackers, and then it's Bryce Underwood. We'll see what happens with that, but obviously he has the raw talent. So if he can just put it together in these next couple months, we will get the Bryce Underwood that Michigan fans were all looking for. That's all I have for today, and as always, go Blue.